Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, if you're looking to get yourself into PC gaming or you're looking to upgrade the rig that you already have, there are some frankly ridiculous discounts to be had this Black Friday. And what we're going to do in this video is actually go through my best builds at the budget end, mid-range and high end to show you the best things that you can be getting, so the best components and also the best possible deals and the best possible discounts. Now this video has been proudly sponsored by Newegg, so obviously we'll be looking at Newegg, and I'll tell you, I had a little sneak peek before I started filming this, and genuinely, I can't quite believe some of the discounts that are on offer. So let's actually jump in and show you what I mean. And the way that this is going to work is pretty straightforward. We're going to start off with our budget-friendly rig because I want PC gaming to be accessible. It's not all about, RTX ray tracing. It is just playing the games that you love with a mouse and keyboard, however you want to play them, right? Newegg do categorize all of the different things. So if you just want to explore, then obviously you can click through and find things depending on the area that you're looking for. But for someone that kind of knows what they're looking for, that's very big-headed, we can actually use their search functionality that will search through the deals, which is great. And I do also want to draw your attention to the fact that some of the prices here, like this one for this 7600X, is on offer, save 24%, $225. You do also get some promo codes on some of these as well. So you apply this at the checkout, and then the total discount price will come off, which is pretty cool. But interesting enough, if we search for Intel, then you should see that quite a lot of them are reduced. And it kind of depends what you're after, really. If you're going to go for like high end, then even something like the 14900K that's on offer here, with a discount, that's $425. That's definitely going to be worth considering, because if you do a lot of productivity on your rig and gaming, then obviously that's going to be a great option. But actually, it is when we get down to the more entry-level stuff that things get really interesting. And I am genuinely blown away by this one. This is the one that kind of made me go, really? How are they doing that? So you can get the 12600K, which was one of the best gaming CPUs a couple of years ago and is still really, really good today for, what's that, $170, 20 off, so $150. But this also comes with a copy of Assassin's Creed Shadows, free Ubisoft Plus for 6 months, and an SSD, a terabyte SSD. So if you're looking to build a budget-friendly gaming PC, then you kind of get most of the stuff you need, really, in just this alone. And it was only a few months ago, well, maybe more, start of the year, that you were kind of looking at like 12400F for around about $150 or so. So to be able to get all of that for the same price is pretty ridiculous. So we're going to add this one to our basket, and then obviously we will now need a CPU cooler to go along with this. Looks as if it's under PC accessories. And then we've got loads of different fans and things on offer here. If you want to upgrade your CORSAIR QLs, now's probably a good time to do it. We've also got 360mm coolers for $70. That's not too bad at all. Budget-friendly fans and things. Yeah, there's definitely a lot here. But actually, we're going to filter this down properly now into CPU air coolers, because obviously they're far more affordable. What I will say, though, is that while this chip should be fine at the Intel stock limits, do be aware that this is potentially an overclockable chip, and it can use a lot of power if you change some of the BIOS settings. So just make sure, if you are going to go down this route and use it as a budget-friendly chip, that you're buying a sufficient cooler and that you are potentially limiting the amount of power it's going to use if you run into some issues. But in terms of the options that we have here, something like a Hyper 212 Halo, $25, Hyper 212 Spectrum for $10, but the one that actually is catching my eye here, granted I haven't used this, but I did a little bit of research, and this should get you around about like 60 to 70 degrees at about 125 watt load or so, which is probably about right. So yeah, for around about $25, 5 heat pipes, compatible with 1700. It says it goes up to 200 watts, but not sure about that. Yes, let's add this one to our basket. I mean, to be fair as well, look, we're helped out here by Steve. Runs his 12600K at around about 60 degrees, little room for overclocking. Stock fan is a little bit on the louder side. To be expected, but to be fair, if you're running at 60 degrees, you could tune the fans down so that it runs at 80 degrees or so if you wanted to go for something a lower noise. Or I suppose you could just add another fan potentially to this if you get the mounting in the box. But of course, now we're going to need to grab ourselves a graphics card, and again, loads of deals, but I want to look really between $100 and about $250 or so. Usually you're looking between like an Intel Arc GPU, something like a RX 6600, 7600, maybe like a 4060. So right at the bottom, we've got an RX 580. That is pretty old at this point. So let's press on to something like a 3050 for $150. Not too bad, but then you could get a 6600 for $190. If you really were trying to go as budget as possible, then a 3050 is solid, but it's not the absolute best value for money normally, but sale price worth considering. Actually, the one that catches my eye today is this one. We can get an RX 7600 for $230. So obviously if you wanted to save yourself some money, go for the 3050, or of course go for the 6600. But actually the 7600, as I say, that's not too shabby at all, and it's obviously a little bit more modern, but that one actually comes with a blower style cooler. That's the only thing. So actually that would put me off, because I think this one is going to be a little bit louder than some of the other cards. So was there anything same sort of price point? Well, not specifically in the Black Friday discount sale. So actually, let's go with the 6600. This was the original choice anyway. Tried and tested. Fantastic for 1080p. Anything multiplayer, this is going to be excellent at for now and the considerable future. But it's a great entry-level card, really. And obviously, very flexible. 8 gig of VRAM should be fine. Just make sure you turn some of the textures down in the very latest AAA games. Next up, we're going to need to grab ourselves a motherboard. And here we're going to look for a B760 motherboard. This supports memory overclocking, not CPU overclocking, but to be fair, with our system, especially with the cooler, we're not going to be doing that anyway. So the one here for $90 with the discount code, we have a GIGABYTE gaming one. That's probably going to be a great option. Could also go for a mortar, but that's a little bit more. I want to go for micro ATX anyway, because that means we can save ourselves a little bit money on the chassis. We've got loads of pre-built systems here as well, of course, so if you don't want to build it yourself, obviously check out Newegg, because they have loads of different systems in their Black Friday discount as well. But yes, let's just triple check before we commit to this. It actually has Wi-Fi as well. It's a DDR4 motherboard, so obviously we need to get DDR4 RAM, not DDR5. It's not going to be like the absolute most feature-rich board in the world, but actually this is not the most bare bones either. So yeah, liking this, we'll add this to our basket. And actually here, look, there's a really decent combo offer as well, which is some CORSAIR Vengeance 32 gig RAM, usually $53.99, but if you buy them together, you get another $11 off. So that's 3200, so it's not quite as fast as a 3600 megahertz kit. So let's just check pricing before we commit. Well, as you'd expect, it is actually slightly more to go for 3600, but not by that much. So $4 off that. So what's that, about $49 if my maths is correct. You won't get the combo discount, but I think that is going to be worth going for the slightly faster speed. But then of course we will need to grab ourselves a case. So let's have a look what is in our Black Friday discounts. Again, quite a lot, and definitely quite a lot in terms of varied options. I mean, this is my favorite, the LANCOOL 216. It's a fantastic chassis. I mean, it's going to be overkill for this, not budget friendly, but we'll potentially come back to that in one of the future rigs. But let's have a look at micro ATX. Oh, I love the AP201. I love that case. Honestly, it's fantastic. Like, as long as you're okay with not actually seeing inside, it's awesome. Okay, I think we found it. This is the case I use for my personal rig in the living room. If you want to find that video, actually, you can find it in the top right corner of your screen. I mean, don't get me wrong, this case doesn't have the quality associated with like a £200 or $200 chassis. But yeah, for $60, I think that's an absolute steal, really. And as I say, it's micro ATX, so it's really going to work with our system. With our SSD actually already added as part of one of our free gifts that we got with the CPU, I think it is just the power supply to go. And helpfully we have a little power supply tab. And yes, again, as you'd expect, loads and loads of offers on here. But with this particular rig, as I say, the CPU is going to use a little bit, but the graphics card, I mean, we can do a quick search actually. The official minimum is 500 watts. I don't mind 550 power supplies, but I usually think that people, when they get into PC gaming, they keep upgrading their rig. So if you like skimp out on a really cheap 550 watt power supply, fine now, and if you're not going to upgrade it, great. But if you do and you want to go for a better graphics card, you'd have to swap it out as well. So I would look for a 650 where possible. Here you are. Okay, really boring because we use this loads of times on the channel, but this is probably my favorite overall budget power supply. The MSI Mag A650BN, not a particularly catchy name. It's not modular, it's bronze rated, but it just kind of does what you need it to do, really. And as I say, because it's 650 watts, you can actually upgrade this to like a better graphics card at a later date if you want. But I think that is now actually everything in our rig, which brings our grand total, drumroll please, to $619.92, which is not too shabby whatsoever for a gaming PC that's going to be able to cope with 1080p, 1440p, you know, not in every single title, but the point is it's going to be really, really flexible, and it doesn't matter what sort of games you play, it's going to allow you to play them. I mean, the other thing as well, of course, with this is that it is going to be very upgradable, as I say, especially with that CPU. That's actually, if anything, it's an overpowered CPU for this particular rig, but that does give you some upgradability. I mean, obviously, like, you can't go down the Intel Core Ultra route with this. You're going to have to stick with something like a 12th, 13th or 14th gen chip, but that doesn't seem to be too much of an issue at the moment. But yeah, there's our budget rig. What do you think? Have I got this right, or have I got this completely wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to check out current pricing on this, it's down in the description. But let's now move on to our mid-range rig. And this time, the first component I actually want to look at is going to be the graphics card, even though this is kind of calling my name, but we'll potentially come back to that. We have some 4060s, obviously over $300 or so. I'd be looking for under $300 if you're looking for that particular card. 7700 XT, this is not going to be a bad shout actually, because unlike the one we saw earlier, this is like a proper, like normal style graphics card. It's got 2 fans on it and it doesn't have that blower that, as I say, can produce quite a lot of noise. So actually $360 looks to be quite good on that, but we'll come back to that and see what else we have. Obviously you can look at the 4060 Ti, but as we know, it's not my favorite graphics card, mainly just because it has 8 GB of VRAM. So even if it does have extra performance, that is potentially going to limit you, well, now and going forward, really, if you're playing a lot of AAA titles. You've got another 7700 XT here from GIGABYTE. This one is $400. So I would probably look at the 7700 XT, and I'd go for this Acer one. But then let's now actually move on and get ourselves a CPU. So the one that is kind of calling to you, quite literally, is this 7600X, look. So with $30 off, that's $195. That, for what is a ridiculously good 6-core chip, very, very exciting. But I do want to look at the other options. So if you wanted to step it up, look to a 7700X, that's going to be $270. But I'm actually more interested in the slightly lower powered versions. So if we have a look at the 7600, that's actually going to be a fair bit less. So that's definitely the way I would want to look if you're trying to save yourself as much money as possible. But if we went for the 7700, so again, this is the non-X version, this one is $288. So I'd actually advise going for the 7600 here, unless you specifically know you're going to be playing games that need 8 cores or really CPU bound. We will then of course need to grab ourselves a AMD compatible motherboard, so AM5 for this particular chip. Again, as you can see, loads and loads of different boards here to pick from. I'd probably look at going for B650 or B650E. A few different options. We can get the Eagle actually. I've used this quite a few times on the channel and it seems to work absolutely fine, to be honest. But interestingly, if you did want to go for the cheapest B650E, which is going to give you PCIe Generation 5 support on the graphics card, which is going to be great for future-proofing, then you're getting on for almost double the price of the board. And then I would argue, with the time you're upgrading your graphics card, you might find that you can just upgrade your motherboard as well, and it's going to give you extra features and isn't going to cost a crazy difference. So we're going to go for B650, and we are going to go for this Eagle, because as I say, I've actually used this quite a few times on the channel, and I know it works quite well. This being an AM5 motherboard, obviously we'll need to grab ourselves some DDR5 memory, and I've got this filtered to 6000 megahertz actually. And again, we're going to do our good old friend low to high. You want something that's also fast but is quite low latency, but because again, we're not spending crazy amount of money on the CPU, you don't have to buy the absolute best of the best. I mean, this one actually has an Expo profile, but what's the latency? CAS 38, this one's slightly cheaper, also CAS 38. Oh, but actually the winner is the cheapest one, look, the Patriot Viper Venom 32 gig, CAS latency 36, also running at 6000 megahertz. Not entirely sure this one actually has an Expo profile, but in theory, as long as you update your motherboard BIOS, then you should be able to get it to work. But it depends obviously on the motherboard and the RAM. This is the sort of thing that we can never fully test, if you like. In these videos, we can't do full compatibility on everything because we haven't physically built them. So always bear things like this in mind. Because we've gone for our Ryzen CPU though, we don't get the free SSD this time. So let's have a look and see what we can find. Again, sound like a broken record here, but loads of deals on different SSDs and things. Typically, really, for this sort of rig, you're looking at a terabyte, PCIe Generation 4, doesn't have to be the absolute fastest with DRAM cache. You're looking for, again, price to performance. You've got one from MSI here, look, for $45. You've got a T-Force for $50, MP600 for $58. So this one from MSI is pretty slow. To be clear, this is still pretty fast. It's not going to be an issue. But generally, if you're buying one for a similar price, obviously you want to buy the faster one. Yeah, that one's not bad actually, 4800 for $50, that's good. Is there any difference in this MP600? No, actually that one's slightly slower with the looks of it. It looks like the Team Group one is actually going to be slightly faster, at least in theory. So we can add this one to our basket. Then we can navigate over to power supplies, and this time I want to go for 750 watts as the recommended minimum is 700. I think with this CPU you could probably get away with a 650 to be honest with you, but it's not something I would want to officially recommend, especially bear in mind, again, you might want to upgrade your CPU, you might want to upgrade your graphics card. So it makes sense to step that up slightly this time around. So we've got our cheaper ones here at the top, but something like the CX750M is going to be a great value option. But actually, I think the one I would go for would be this one, the RM750X. Corsair, in my experience, has been very reliable. It's very easy to upgrade the cables and swap things out if you want to at a later date as well, because they sell so many of them. And for $80, that looks to be a pretty decent price, actually. So we'll add this one to our basket, and that just leaves the case. And to make this as nice and as easy as possible, I've filtered this now by ATX, so you can kind of see all of the offers. I mean, I think these things are subject to change. So again, hit the links down in the description below if you want to see all of the current offers and current pricing when you're watching this. But it's a very personal choice with the case, so obviously get one that's large enough for you, but one that actually kind of looks the way you want it to look, I suppose. And the one I would probably pick if it was me, and it's boring because I always say this, is this one here, which is the LANCOOL 216. This has very large like front RGB fans on it, so you get great airflow. It's very easy to build in, and the thing for me is the build quality on that. It's like a tank. I think its build quality far exceeds the price tag. But actually, I want to go for something a little bit different here today. I want to go for this offer because this seems pretty good to me. Fractal North ATX, $110 or $109.99. I think it's going to be very striking, and a lot of people are a big fan of this. So for a change, we're going to go with this one. And then that kind of is the end, but then also not the end, not the video. Don't worry, we've got the high end as well. Because technically, this would now be, I believe, a fully working rig. Oh, there's some coupons that have applied. Actually, $990 now. This would be everything. And eagle-eyed viewers or my dog ears that hears bloomin' everything may have noticed that we haven't actually mentioned the CPU cooler yet, and we are going to add one. But if you go for the non-X version of the Ryzen 5 7600, it does actually come with one, so that would suffice, to be honest with you, if you just wanted to save as much money as possible and get one at a later date. But it's not the best, and you might run into some thermal issues if you're running like really heavy loads. So instead, I would recommend that we do get a CPU cooler. And genuinely, you don't need to go for anything particularly crazy in price. I mean, actually, this is going to use less power than the i5 we had in our budget rig. So this is why I say don't worry about it too much. Most of these options should actually be pretty sufficient. I'm just going to stick with a standard Cooler Master Hyper 212. If you want to go for an all-in-one, spend more money, fine. But I think actually going for this jet black version, especially bear in mind we've got non-RGB RAM, I think this is just going to look quite complete, actually. We have everything that we need. $1,000 gaming PC, pretty much, 1,014, and you're going to absolutely love the performance you get on this thing. It is going to be frankly ridiculous. And as I say, you have that chassis as well, which frankly is kind of very high end, and it's just going to bring everything together. This is obviously on a newer platform. It's going to be easier to upgrade. But if you want to just get the maximum bang for buck, then you could get this power supply, put it in the previous rig, and then get this graphics card, put it in there, and obviously that will save yourself some money and give you very similar performance. But overall, I think this is going to be a much better rig for $1,000-ish. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But let's move on to the most important one, the high end. And obviously this means different things to different people. I've put $425 to $750 into our graphics card, which is obviously quite a wide range, but if there are really good deals to be had, some people might want to spend less or more, depending on obviously what's available. 4070, you can actually get it for 4070 after a rebate. There you are, 4070 for 4070. That's not a bad shout, actually. My favorite is probably going to be the 4070 Ti Super. I will say that if you're looking at getting a 4080 and 4090, if you need to play games like right now, then great. But obviously do be aware that we are expecting new cards to replace those probably around about like February sort of time. We don't really know. They haven't been announced. We're just going off rumors and things, right? Do be aware of that. You can buy this 4070 Ti Super Expert for $750. That's also not bad. That's a really attractive GPU. You can buy a 4070 Super, but personally that's not my favorite, purely because it has 12 gig of VRAM, which for a card that costs around about $650 or so, I think is a little bit tight. So I'd probably go for AMD if you're looking at that sort of price point instead. But I've got to admit, I am actually pretty smitten by this, which is the 4070 Ti Super Expert. I mean, it's a very attractive graphics card. It's kind of going for like Founders Edition-esque, but it's slightly different. It's got quite a lot of edge. Pretty much like the price to performance sweet point at the high end. As long as you're willing to use DLSS frame gen and DLSS super resolution, then you can do most things on this that you could do with those other cards. It's only really like certain path tracing where things get really intense. But yeah, I think for $750, that's definitely worth considering if you're going for a high-end rig. So add this one to our basket. And then I think we can actually pick a CPU. And as you can see, there are definitely quite a lot of different chips on offer. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, 9800X3D, let's go for that. And the thing that I still think is a little bit like murky that not everyone is understanding is that just because that is the absolute best gaming CPU, it doesn't mean it's the right CPU for you, because you're on a fixed budget almost certainly, right? So if you allocate a lot of that budget specifically to the CPU, then what you might find is that means that you can't afford the graphics card you want, which obviously then means that your rig doesn't actually have the same performance that you wanted just because you've gone for a better CPU than you necessarily needed. So let's have a look what we actually have on offer here. So you can get something like a 9700X like for $350. This is a 12-core chip, and the performance of this isn't going to be as good as the 7800X 3D. But it's not like a crazy amount far off, especially if you're playing at 1440p and 4K, which most people are. It's going to give you very similar performance. And future-proofing, a lot of people say, well, obviously you want something that's future-proof, but you're buying on AM5. So if you're finding that you're running into CPU bottlenecking in like 2 or 3 years' time when you upgrade your graphics card, then actually you'd be getting even better performance if you'd saved the money, sold your then CPU, and obviously upgraded that to the then current chip that will have a lot more performance than the ones of today, if that makes sense. So if you need a 9800X 3D, you need the top end performance, go for it, but not everyone does. It's about finding the kind of sweet spot, right? So let's have a look. We also have this 7950X. If you're going for productivity, you need 16 cores. Yeah, look, if you want a 7800X 3D, it's still $550, and the 9800X 3D is out of stock. But actually, for $325, I'm pretty intrigued by this 9700X actually. It's not going to be right for everyone. If you can get a 9800X 3D for the same sort of price, I would go for that, to be clear. And I wouldn't like pay an overinflated price for a 9800X 3 or a 7800X 3D 12-core chip. I think it's going to be a good choice. But let's now have a look at AMD motherboards once again, but this time I'm definitely going to want to go for B650E or X870 because I do want to have that future-proofing with PCIe Generation 5 on that top slot. So you can get the Eagle look X870 for $230. You can get the X870 Riptide for $250. You can buy the B650 AOS Elite look, $220, but obviously that would mean you have to go for a white rig. But actually the one that's kind of standing out to me is the offer that we have on this, which is the X670E. This has pretty much everything you need, and you also have loads of M.2 slots as well for drives and plenty of M.2 cooling, and you have like decent VRMs and things if you did want to do some overclocking with like PBO or something like that. So yes, we're going to go with this. I think $220 for X670E is a very good price. Let's have a look at our RAM, shall we, as well. I've filtered this to CAS 30 or lower and 6000 megahertz. $90 if you don't want RGB. Even less actually if you go for this one from Team Group, but I do want RGB this time. You can go for Corsair for $100. Or for slightly more, you can get the Trident Z5 Neo. And then of course, we will also need to grab ourselves some storage, and I saw on the homepage that we do have a 990 Pro 2TB for $160 look. But the one that's really standing out to me is this one, which is not going to be quite as good. It's the SN550X, but it's not going to be particularly far off, to be honest. And this is coming in at $125 versus $160. So if you want like the best of the best Gen 4 drive, then you are looking at something like a 990 Pro. But for what gamers need, you may as well save yourself the money. This is still overkill when it comes to speed anyway, and go for the 2TB SN850X. Now, obviously, when it comes to cooling, there are quite a few different options available. Now, this chip is going to use more power than the 8-core versions because you have 2 CCDs, and I find that, again, you don't need anything crazy, but you do need something a bit more substantial if you're going to go for a 12-core chip rather than an 8. We could get this 360 look from Be Quiet for $125. And then arguably, if you wanted one of the best all-round coolers, you could look at this, which is the H150i iCUE Link LCD, long name. Usually that is very expensive, but you can get that for $175 at the moment. So if you want an LCD display, that's not going to be a bad shout. And in the end, I'm settling on this Corsair because, as I say, I think it does everything. The only thing it is going to mean is it potentially means we're going to be looking at some expensive QX fans if we want everything to link up. I mean, how much are they? $140. $140 for 3 fans when you can have like the full cooler for, what was that, about 180? I think we're going to stick with the case fans. Oh, actually, when I did that, look, we got our combo savings as well. So we are actually saving another $20 on this RAM. So, okay, that made sense. We get another $5 off the cooler as well. I told you Newegg got some deals. Now, haters definitely going to hate, but I don't care. We are going to go with the LANCOOL 216, mainly because it's just, as I say, such an easy case to build in. You've got the rim at the top for the 360, but then because you have those front RGB fans that look great and are pretty decent when it comes to performance, you don't need to swap those out, just whack those on an RGB header, and then, as I say, everything should be taken care of. They won't sync up with the CORSAIR fans, obviously, so either set everything to the same color or rainbow or have different effects. That's the compromise, but again, $99 for what I think is just the best all-round case. Not too shabby. Which means then, folks, that there's just one component left to go, and that, of course, is the power supply. I think 750 is going to be fine, but I'm going to go for 850 just to make sure, again, we've got loads of upgradability. The MSI Mag 850GL is actually the one I'm going to want to go for here, purely because it actually comes with our PCIe Generation 5 connection. And just by chance, I promise, this looks like it was set up. It wasn't. I actually have the exact one here. I've been talking about this a lot recently, because it's really easy to build in. The cables are good, but it also has the safety connection on the PCIe Gen 5 ATX3, which has a little bit of yellow on it, which means that if it's not actually plugged in all of the way, then you can see. $89, let's add this one to our basket. The Newegg will automatically calculate all of the discounts and things, add the different combos, and then that actually leaves us at a pretty good price for this level of PC, $1,841, and this is pretty much a no compromise machine. You'll be able to play every game, not necessarily at every setting, but for the vast majority of them, you'll be running them at max settings and still getting really good frame rates, even if you're playing at 1440p or 4K with DLSS. But it depends what you're going to use it for, depends on pricing. As you see, Newegg has pretty much got everything you need. There's loads of offers, but I shouldn't have to convince you. Links to everything are located. And that was actually quite funny timing, as the door also went as I caught that up, and as you can see, it's a sunny day, so I've got like the Tony Stark look going on here now. The guy that answered the door got a full blast of PC Centric, "Hey, how's it going, man?" and looked a little bit confused. I was saying, if you do want to check out current pricing on anything that was featured in this, as I say, Newegg links to everything are located down below. And join the PC Centric Discord, where we'll be giving you all of the deals throughout the Black Friday week, so you can check out, as I say, like the best deals, get the best possible prices. But I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Smash the like button if you've enjoyed it, get yourself subscribed, and we'll catch you in the next one.